KNUS Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Six a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, July 31st, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show News, Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Guilty, 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 guilty. On murder and 5 additional counts. James Craig determined by a group of peers that he had, in fact, murdered his wife and tried to cover it up and tried to influence witnesses and tried to potentially kill the detective involved in the case, found guilty on all counts yesterday. Steffan Tubbs, who's been following this case from the very beginning, has been part of 48 Hours or 2020 interviews, will also be joining us here in just a few minutes to give us the latest on the James Craig trial and his reflections, his thoughts as the dentist from Aurora who administered medicine and did surgery on Bill Thorpe's teeth.
Yeah.
Found guilty of murder, my friend. Your thoughts?
Ugh. Well, again, why'd it take so long? Again, yeah, we talked about it. We're not in the courtroom. We don't know what the deliberations were like, but we kind of looked at this and thought about the defense not necessarily carrying water very well, that they weren't
Correct.
making a very, I don't know, believable argument, might be the best way to put it, is, just the Sean Combs. Well, he's a bad guy, but he's not this bad of a guy. But they didn't counteract some of the narratives. And I still come back to, I think if you talk to some of the jurors, part of the problem that we'd highlighted is that all the searches that Dr. Craig was doing was about killing someone and poison not being found in autopsies, but nothing about helping his wife through this psychological issue that was his defense. His defense being that she wanted to commit suicide, and so he was playing a game of chicken, but there wasn't a single search that the defense could point to in any of his computer history where he asked the question, why does someone feel this way? How do you deal with this? How do you talk them out of it? The odd part is, even when he allegedly found out, again, we're just going with his story, that his wife had suicidal ideas and was talking about killing herself, he helped. And you're talking about the idea of this being the mother of his children, love of his life, the wife he wanted to stay married to. That was the story that was being sold, despite the fact that he was stepping out on her, that he still was committed to her and the family, but he never tried to save her for the family. Instead, he began to play along with the game. And I have a hard time finding any juror that would buy into that. The idea of, again, you have someone that is significant in your life, and they start talking about, yeah, well, maybe the best thing to do is if I just end it all right here. If I just kill myself right here. And you're like, oh, yeah, let me go downstairs to the gun safe. I'll be right back in a second. Do you want me to get the rifle or the handgun? The person would, someone else that would be a third-party viewer of that situation going, hang on, I think you're enabling. I think you're not approaching this situation as serious as it is. When someone expresses an idea of killing themselves, the number one thing you do is don't encourage them and offer them possibilities. Not necessarily helpful at that time. Just saying. But this is weeks and even months of him not being helpful. In fact, encouraging and enabling it. So if that's the defense, that's a hard sell for a jury. That's a really hard sell because there's nothing in his background that we saw presented by the defense where he had any questions about how to help his wife, any questions about, again, if he's committed to the relationship, okay, and he wants to even play along. Why isn't he giving her placebos? Why isn't he doing things like that? But instead, he goes and he tries to search out the most deadly poisons he can find. He is so in need of cyanide that he shows up at a warehouse asking if they have a storefront because he doesn't want to wait for shipping. It just doesn't sound like a spouse that is trying to make sure that their better half or other half stays alive and is there for the kids. It doesn't work. And so, yeah, I was surprised it took this long, though. But we talked about it yesterday, that we said if we came back today and they didn't have a verdict, we were going to have some serious questions about maybe we have misjudged how well the defense presented a case. Your thoughts?
Well, he received a sentence of life in prison, James Craig, without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder count, as well as 33 additional years served consecutively for the additional counts. My guess is that the time with the jury was around all those additional counts. I think it was very clear that he had committed the murder. Now you have all this other stuff, because remember, this is an entangled case. He's writing letters to former jailmates. He's writing letters to the spouses of his current jailmates, trying to get them to plant evidence to possibly murder the Aurora police detective that had put together the case. So there's all of these elements of it. I'm sure the jury just had to work through it, but it seemed very clear they didn't buy a single thing Jim Craig was selling, either about Angela, about his relationships. He was clearly a man that had deceived many, deceived his family, deceived his wife throughout the entirety of their marriage. And so in my mind, the dude was so tainted and so stained from the very beginning that if I was a juror, and I think they got this one exactly right, it was just a short step to freeing him and becoming the, sympathetic widower that then he could use to continue to collect his harem of women. So,
how bad was it that he was, the time in which he's telling the woman that he met in Vegas at the conference, he's expressing that he's falling in love with her at the same time that he's texting another woman he's cheating with. So, again, that for me, if I'm sitting in that jury box and the prosecution highlights that even if I think that I'm trying to find sympathy or empathy with the doctor and think that maybe he does just want out of this and maybe something went wrong and he didn't want to really kill her but felt he was trapped or whatever. As soon as we get to he's telling one woman he just met in the previous 48 to 72 hours that he's falling in love with her at the same time that he's texting another woman, that pretty much tears down most of that story in my mind.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk with Steffan Tubbs, who's been following this from the beginning, former host of 710 KNUS here, the Steffan Tubbs Show. And then, Bill, I want to get your reflections when we've got Steffan on. The guy did procedures for you. And I can't think of, oftentimes, one of the most vulnerable places you can be as a human being is when someone's poking around inside your mouth with sharp instruments.
He did surgery on me, and a one that is quite unusual to the point where he asked if he could take pictures and share it with colleagues. Yeah. It's very weird. This is a really weird thing for me. This is really weird.
Bill Thorpe survived the poisoning dentist.
Yes, I know. Oh, sat in his office, wrote copy for him. I just, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder. There are times in which it's like, oh, the guy that was mixing poison to kill his wife also mixed sedatives and gave them to me and prescribed me medication. Wow. Yeah, that's a little spooky. Yeah, exactly. I know.
You survived. Well, we'll talk to Steffan here in just a little bit. Rose Puglisi is going to join us in the 7 o'clock hour as the state of Colorado now faces a $1 billion budget shortfall. The governor calling a special session. What is this all about? We'll get her perspective coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. Rory O'Neill NBC News national correspondent, will be joining us to have a conversation on the Fed Reserve and the interest rates. And then Devin Patrick Hughes of Symphony of the Rockies will be in studio in the 9 o'clock hour, giving us a preview of some upcoming shows. So, whole lot to cover today. Most importantly, though, we want to hear from you. Give us a call at 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Campless Law text line at 720-819-5115. Now it's time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Hey, good morning. It is Thursday, 57 as the sun rises. Going to be a great day. Expecting a high of 87 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, Colorado economists say the state is looking at nearly $1 billion deficiency due to 47's revamping of federal taxes. Lawmakers preparing for significant program cuts. Republicans say the shortfall reflects years of unchecked state spending. Absolutely. Former Colorado dentist James Craig is going to prison for life without parole. Steffan Tubbs joins Jeff and Billy with more in just a few minutes. 47 on Truth Social this morning, writing Make America Great Again. He also said good luck in America's big case today to his great lawyers who have fought to save our country. He's talking tariffs and writes, if we were not able to use tariffs against tariffs, our country would be dead. DJT is fighting back against the corrupt left again, every day, every minute, every hour. Nancy Pelosi next on the hit list, and Senator Josh Hawley is going after her also.
I had a good chat with the president earlier this evening, and he reiterated to me he wants to see a ban on stock trading by people like Nancy Pelosi and members of Congress, which is what we passed today. I think it is absolutely vital we put a stop to this. Pelosi shouldn't just be investigated. She should be prosecuted. And we need to make what she is doing and other members of Congress is doing illegal. I mean, you shouldn't be able to go up to Congress and get rich by trading on information that only you have and not members of the public. Right now, lots of members of Congress are getting by with it. We need to make the whole thing illegal.
And Jay Tapper, guess what he's trying to do? He's trying to act like an actual journalist, asking Pelosi about DJT, calling her out on social media about insider trading.
So Nancy Pelosi became rich.
Why do you have to read that? We're here to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid. That's what I agreed to come to talk about.
Yeah, but I wanted
what that means in the election.
I wanted to give you a chance just to respond. He accused you of insider trading. What's your response to that?
That's ridiculous. In fact, I very much support the stop the trading of members of Congress. Not that I think anybody's doing anything wrong. If they are prosecuted and they go to jail. But because of the confidence it instills in the American people, don't worry about this.
Yeah, don't worry about it. The left is all corrupt, crooks. By the way, Kamala Khan says she won't be running for governor of California. Good news for California. DJT says it's going to be difficult to reach a trade deal with Canada after their Prime Minister Carney announced plans to recognize a Palestinian state. He said that Canada would recognize Palestine as a state if the Palestinian Authority commits to certain conditions. Trump wrote on Truth that Carney's announcement will make it very hard for us to make a trade deal with them. The Colorado Clown Show, led by Governor Polis in this state, posted this on Wednesday.
Today, the Environmental Protection Agency made the reckless and unnecessary decision to reject decades of data and move our climate efforts backwards. The EPA made the decision to repeal the science-based standard that acknowledges the simple reality that greenhouse gas pollution is harmful to our health and the environment. and it puts Colorado communities at risk. We're already seeing this increased heat exposure, hail and fire risk, which lead to homeowners insurance skyrocketing. Climate change is here, and frankly, it's already affecting us. In fact,
yes, the old climate change.
He admits, by the way, Blake, that the three largest wildfires in state history happened under his watch.
Yes.
It's like I'm watching that statement, and he goes, climate change is here. In fact, the three largest fires the state has ever had in history happened in the last 5 years. I'm like,
under my watch.
Under your watch, Jared.
Exactly. How about some controlled burns here and there?
Well, yeah, and cleaning up the forests.
Yes,
all that
absolutely.
stuff.
And there's a thing called God.
Yeah.
They don't know about, they never talk about God. Hey, have you ever, this kind of reminded me of Polis, so I'm going to play this. Do you remember this in 2013?
I have returned with the answer to all your problems. Global warming. I thought you were against it. Everybody's against it, Prime Minister. I suddenly realized that is the beauty of it. We can get a unanimous agreement with all of our European partners to do something about it. But how can we do something about something that isn't happening? It's much easier to solve an imaginary problem than a real one. Do you believe it's real? Do you? I don't know. Neither do I. I haven't got the faintest idea. But it doesn't matter what we think. If everyone else thinks it's real, they'll all want to stop it, as long as it doesn't cost too much. So
I love that. I'll play the rest of it for you.
It's very accurate. Look,
yes.
I spent 5 summers as a river guide outside every single day, all day long, dealing with water, which is, a big issue in Colorado and how important that is to the recreational industry. 2002 was the 100-year drought. It was the big drought and the big fires that took place, and we'd wake up and head to work with ash on our car from the fires and all that stuff. That was 2002. And look, I've learned over time, you just go through cycles. There's just a natural way about this world that you just kind of go through these different cycles. We've had great water years since then. We've had terrible water years since then, and you just persevere. But this idea, and I've often seen it as like the pastor who talks about fidelity in marriage and then has side pieces. When these people are like, global warming is going to kill us, we need to use the power of government to shut down industries and then get on private jets and fly to resort locations. I mean, it's just, you don't even believe what you're selling, and it's so clear in the way you live your life. That's how I've seen all this stuff.
I'm right there with you. I guarantee you most of them don't believe in God. They don't. I would love to ask them. All right, Broncos training camp continues today through Saturday. They're off on Sunday. CU Buffs happy to have Coach Prime back. We'll have more on his story on bladder cancer. Interesting. I'll have that next hour. Rockies shut out by Cleveland. Pittsburgh in town tomorrow at Coors Field. 54 in Lafayette, 55 in Centennial, 57 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on this Thursday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Deep monsoonal moisture will continue to flow into Colorado, especially over the next 3 days. Chances for thunderstorms will be high, and some will produce heavy rain. Highs upper 70s and low 80s today, low to mid 80s Thursday and Friday, with nighttime temperatures in the upper 50s, with a daily occurrence of showers and thunderstorms, some producing heavy rain. Weather is a service of L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Funny text messages coming in. This one, Bill, from 7143. You need to get a T-shirt that says, "I survived the poisoning dentist."
Shout out to that one. I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking about how many would I have to print, when we contact the company that we've been working with. I'm like, how many would they print for me? Because what I would do, though, is not just Killer Dentist. You got to put Summerbrook Dental, because that doesn't exist anymore. And the principals are not running the business, and one of them's in prison. So I'm pretty sure there's not going to be any copyright issues. So I just would love to print the idea of, on the front, I survived Summerbrook Dental and the Killer Dentist is what I put on the front. And then on the back, I would put Dr. James Craig convicted of murdering his wife and the date. That's what I would do. That, if I was going to sell the T-shirts, that's what I would do. And something like, or maybe in the back you even put I was a patient or something like that. But the idea that I was a patient or I survived Summerbrook Dental and the Killer Dentist. Because I think the name of the dentist office is just kind of important. Just because you got to remember that this thing actually existed. This was a real dental office, a real dentist that was doing surgery on myself and on Steffan Tubbs, who's going to be joining us here in a couple of minutes, and putting his fingies in our mouths and shooting prescription drug stuff into us. And do prescribe me drugs after several surgeries. So
and they weren't cyanide laced. Thank God.
I know. That's some of the text messages would be much happier if they were. They wouldn't have me in the morning. They'd be much happier. Like, God, if only I killed Billy first. Then we'd be okay with it. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But I would print the T-shirts. But the imagine just how many.
Summerbrook was not anybody's name, right? It was just kind of. It's like how they name streets.
Yeah, it's like or how they name those little HOA places.
Yeah, right.
This is the Summit at Rocky Point. That's all it is. That's basically what it is. That's it.
Well, it was an emotional day yesterday as James Craig was found guilty by a group of his peers on the charge of first-degree murder, as well as 5 other counts, including efforts to interfere with the investigation and even try to get the detective involved in investigating the case murdered. The Denver Gazette writing, "Many shed tears as Whitaker read the verdict." That's the judge. Both parties then requested immediate sentencing. "It's been a hard thing," said Tolliver Craig, the defendant's oldest son, his voice audibly breaking before his father's sentence was read. "It's hard to lose your mom. 3 days after that, lose your dad, and then have to spend the next 2 years untangling whatever he tells you." Because remember, he had lots of different motives or excuses.
And he had to talk to the kids, and we've talked about this before, that how difficult is this for the kids going forward, because the foundational relationship that they have in their life has turned out to be not just a betrayal, but involve a murder. So going forward, the thing that is supposed to represent how relationships work, the number one closest example you have in your life growing up that you should be able to look back at. And again, I'm not saying that every marriage is perfect, but kids, as they grow up, they will see the positives and the negatives, and they'll see the warts and they'll see the great times, and that shapes their relationships in the future. How do these kids going forward trust?
Oh, it's
how
brutal.
Do they? Yeah.
And remember, too, this is a religious family.
Yes.
So this is a family that, everything's kind of fallen apart.
Yeah.
So they've lost their mom. They've now lost their dad. And throughout the course of a 10-day trial are listening to things about their dad where you're just going like, what?
Yeah.
What?
That he was thinking this. Yeah. And the time is, remember, these kids also, not like Jeff, myself, and Steffan Tubbs is going to join us in a second. We're seeing this from a distance. These kids were in the house, and those that weren't living there would come and visit, and they would have a family situation. And I think that's Steffan ringing the bell. We'll get to him in a sec. But they saw this, so they had to feel, look at the idea that they saw mom and dad together, and they saw these interactions, and then to realize that during that time when they were viewing the family unit this way, that dad was actually hatching a plot to kill mom, and behind the scenes going through all of the steps to find the poison, to test it out, to give her doses on different occasions. And that's the entire time while they were sitting in the house seeing something different. And the other part with those kids, and again, this is going to be the idea, we talked about it earlier, is how do these kids going forward in their lives trust? Because they also are going to have a lot of self-doubt, because they're going to have some crisis about, why couldn't I save mom? Why didn't I see it?
Right.
There's nobody else that was closer to this action. Why couldn't one of us discover it? It took the business partner of the dad, their dad, the dentist, discovering, and the people in the office discovering the shipment of cyanide to the office, to where the entire plan started to fall apart. And the kids are going to spend some time really having some self-doubt about, why couldn't I save mom? What did I miss? Why didn't I? And they'll all have, as they go back and look, they're all going to have one or two tiny red flags. Not big ones, because I believe they would have pursued those.
Yeah, they would have spoken out.
They're going to see small things going, if only I would have. And that is going to be so hard for them.
Well, in the courtroom yesterday, Craig's oldest daughter saying this upon the conviction: I was supposed to be able to trust my dad. Crying through her statement, he was supposed to be my hero, and instead he'll forever be the villain in my book. Well, joining us to give us some perspective on this is a guy who's been following this case from day one, former 710 KNUS talk show host Steffan Tubbs. Good morning, Steffan. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Yeah, this should be one of the least shocking verdicts, I think, in recent Colorado courtroom history. There was just an overwhelming amount of evidence. And, in listening to you guys, and obviously we've talked about it, all three of us before, and, to have this guy and, Bill and I and, literally hundreds of others are in the same position. Hey, this guy, put me under. This guy did surgery on me. This guy, did exams on me. Look, I think the bottom line is, now that the dust has sort of settled, sentencing officially hasn't happened yet, but this idiot thought he was going to get away with all of this. That is just the most, of all the myriad reasons why, this guy thought he was going to do this or that, and he could do this or that. I think the bottom line is, he literally thought he was smarter than everybody else in the room. And then once he was in custody, I think he just threw caution to the wind. I think the behavior, and this is just my opinion, the behavior that we saw of James Craig when he was in jail is a direct result of this state's stance on the death penalty. If there were a death penalty, I wonder if James Craig tries to off the lead detective via his former cellmates. When you've got nothing else to lose, and you're not going to be put to death, I think we saw that kind of play out. But I think ultimately, boys, I think he just thought he was going to get away with it.
You see that in so many other aspects of his life, right? Just the sheer number of affairs that he was having throughout the duration of his marriage. That getting caught on that, trying to hide that,
yeah.
Trying to say he was going to return to the marriage, then going right back into the affairs, falling in love with a woman he meets in Las Vegas within 48 hours, while texting somebody else he's still meeting from the Sugar Daddy website, while planning the murder of his wife, and even admitting in the iPhone note that he poisoned her, but it was her idea. She knew the pills were cyanide. She wanted this all along. I mean, this guy was so broken in so many aspects. I don't get the jury. I don't get how the defense expected the jury to go, well, yeah, in light of all this, he might be a bad guy. It doesn't mean he committed murder. I mean, you just sit there and you look at it. From my perspective, the prosecution made the case that this guy was not trustworthy to Angela, to the kids, to his business partners. He was conniving. He lied. And there was an opportunity for him to shoot the moon, to be the sympathetic widower, and to be able to just take the money and have as many relationships as he wanted to, and there was one person in the way of that, and it was going to be Jim Craig, who got her out of the way so he could live the life he wanted to live.
Yeah,
Jury saw
I
it.
don't know how you feel, Bill. Yeah, about the guy that you knew. Look, again, I had this guy as a dentist, I think, for at least 6 or 7 years. Did his advertising when I worked on the morning show at KOA. All of that. Did he always have? Did these kinds of homicidal killers, psychopaths, narcissists? Do they always have that in them, and then something just triggers it? But I think the biggest jaw drop, like during the last couple of weeks of this trial, I don't know how you feel, Bill, about this, but when the prosecution outlines the theory, and, clearly they were accurate. They've got surveillance video from University Hospital. But when they dropped in opening statements that Jim Craig was dressed in blue scrubs the night of March 18th, 2023, he is seen with an object in his hand. He's seen going into Angela's room. Clearly he would go in there. That's his wife. But he's dressed in scrubs. And then he comes out, talks to the nurses. Within 5 minutes, the bells and whistles and alarms go off, and she starts to crash. Another surveillance camera at the same time sees Craig walking down a hallway that is either an exit door at the end or basically a dead end. There's a sharps container for needles at the end of that hallway, and he puts whatever was in his hand in there. I've said this from the beginning, was trying to kill her while she was in the hospital, first with feeding her protein drinks, and her cyanide levels and tetrahydrozoline levels all go up. But just that image, I never saw any surveillance video, but the way they described it, I'm like, that is a sick son of a bitch.
Oh, I'm so glad that you keyed in on that, because that was the thing that shocked me in the opening statements as well, is when they talked about the idea, and it wasn't just the opening statement, but it was when they followed it up with one of the first two witnesses. They asked about, could this be injected into the IV line? I went, oh, crap. Because at that point, they don't bring that up and they don't ask that question. Because, again, we've had enough friends in law enforcement, Steffan Tubbs and Jeff Hunt as well, where we know that the prosecutor doesn't ask a question they don't know the answer to. And so as soon as they laid down that trail of breadcrumbs, you knew, oh, crap. They have not only surveillance footage, but they have other stuff they can offer as proof to where he administered poison inside the hospital, which, if he's trying to kill her, makes a hell of a lot of sense, because she dies while she is in the medical care of other people. That is, for if you're trying to kill your significant other, rather than poisoning her with her workout shakes and having her fall ill at home and going to the hospital, she's already in the hospital. And for her to crash and then pass away, there it is. That's the culmination of the plot and the plan that, in my mind, Jim Craig had hatched, and he saw this as the perfect opportunity to, as he had said a number of times to other women, to get rid of his problem. And that is just shocking. That is the idea, and I am as chilled as you are about this, that he is absolutely a sick son of a bitch, because that means he had to plan this. He had to bring the poison with him. He also had to bring the needle, because all of us that have been in hospitals, they don't have those things laying around. So you'd have to bring the syringe and the needle. So that's all stuff that he would have to bring with him, wait for the opportunity, and then he would have to load it, and then he disposed of it. And it's, again, in theory, as you outline, he thinks he's the smartest man in the room. He disposes it in the sharps container, and they have a bunch of those all over the hospitals. How would they ever possibly be able to trace back the one that he used? Because chances are they're not going to do a murder investigation before all of those sharps containers are emptied and then disposed of. So there's no way to trace it back. There's no way to find the syringe that has his fingerprints on it. Yeah, he's a sick son of a bitch.
Well, the three of us have talked, about this case for a couple of years, right? And when I had my show, we were doing almost daily updates. And the house of cards for Jim Craig starts to completely crumble on March 15th, 2023. That is the date of Angela's crash, and then she would be declared brain dead 3 days later. He's arrested less than 15 hours after she is officially declared dead. But it was that March 15th, that Wednesday, where he just he did it. He injects the IV line. That's when the Redferns, the business partner and his wife, get involved. But remember in the testimony, and we've talked about this over the years, there's a phone call that Craig makes from inside the hospital to the Redferns, and they were both, it goes to Bluetooth, so it's in their car. And that's when the cockamamie stories of, in the box was a ring for his wife. No, it was potassium cyanide he ordered online. And then it keeps coming back to me. And in testimony, they talked about this, how Jim Craig is talking to the business partner, and he's like, oh, and I think it's also in text. I know it's in text as well. But between text and the phone conversation, he's saying, oh, Ryan, the business partner, what have you done? What have you done? What have you done? And don't talk to the police. And, that's when the business partner, it's just truly unbelievable to me, but that's when the business partner, he testified to this in court. He's basically saying, Jim, stop talking, get a lawyer. And that's when Jim Craig's world, it was over. And this, with all due respect to the 18th Judicial Legal Team, this was great detective work and police work, but this was not the case of the century, difficult investigation. They did great work and a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but this idiot made it about as easy as you could for any detective or to me, any prosecuting team.
Yeah, he had made enough mistakes. He just needed someone to look. And I think you're right that everything comes apart during the conversation with the business partner and the business partner's wife, so Dr. Redfern and his wife. And I think it's important, and I appreciate the fact that you highlighted that it was on Bluetooth, because that means it's the two people in the car. And I think that psychologically, that maybe if it was just talking to Dr. Redfern, he would still have some questions, but if you're having that conversation and it's on the speaker in the car and you were looking at your wife going, wait, are you hearing what I'm hearing? This doesn't, you have another person in real time saying, wait, are you having the same kind of questions about what he's saying, and this is getting weird? And so I think that immediate feedback from the wife, I think, was important, because it showed Dr. Redfern, no, what I'm hearing doesn't make sense to me, and it for sure doesn't make sense to my wife, because she testified to that as well. And so I think you're right, that he had made so many mistakes. The only thing that he needed was for someone to look. But if he didn't make the mistake of the conversation with Dr. Redfern, and luckily enough, if the employees at the dental office didn't open the box, those two things together, there it is.
Bill, if they don't, exactly, brother, if they don't open that box, I honestly, I've tried to think about this in plausible ways. If they don't open the box, I think he has a 90+% chance of getting away with it, because they weren't looking. But then after that conversation on the Bluetooth, and that's when Redfern goes to one of the nurses and says, have you, in essence, have you guys talked about or thought about, investigated, looked into the fact she may have been poisoned? Then that opens it up. The only other thing I'll add, I know you guys have a break coming up, but I'll just say I was in court only one day during the trial, and it was just a morning a couple of weeks ago. And I saw a lot of familiar faces. I said hello to Michelle Redfern, who was on that phone call with Jim Craig. But right in front of me again in court were his parents. And they just, it was as if they were waiting. I mean, I don't know how, I can't imagine being them, right?
Yeah.
But it was as if they were in, the third row of church and just ready to hear the sermon. There was nothing but calm. On the other hand, next to them seated directly in front of me was Jim and Angela's oldest daughter, and she had just testified the day before against her dad. And then on the other side, all of Angela's family. She's one of 10 kids. So it's just this family dynamic, and I know how you started, Bill, and it's totally true. These kids, granted, the majority of them are over 18, they're of adult age, but my God, I mean, they lose their mom in such a horrific and public way, and then, they lost their dad immediately. They've been without a dad, basically. But then the sickness, the sickening part of Jim Craig trying to solicit his daughter to cover up and make deep fake videos and lie for him. And I mean, this is one of the most, it's not, again, a crazy, difficult case, because he made it kind of overall easy for them. But what this does mentally to those kids and that family, my God.
Yeah, I think I appreciate you pointing that out, because what does that do to an individual, a child, when one parent asked their help in covering up the potential murder of another? Because it was a potential murder at the time. He wasn't convicted yet. So again, there is going to be obviously some self-doubt inside of the child, inside of the daughter. But wow, I mean, she's going to have to carry that with her the rest of her life, that dad reached out and asked me to help cover up the death of mom. And I appreciate you bringing up the fact that the parents were in the courtroom, parents of Dr. Craig, because that's got to be hard for them as well. I mean, all of us on the show are parents, and we've all unfortunately had instances where people in our life have lost children, and we know how hard that is when you have the parents sitting there and you're in church and you're saying goodbye to the kids. But this is on a different level. This is one where the parents have to sit there and realize that despite their best efforts, their son made this choice. And those parents are also going to have a lot of time of, where did we go wrong? Because you can't help but start to blame yourself at some point or another, because this is your offspring.
They probably lost all relationships with their grandchildren.
Yeah.
I mean that whole line is probably broken. But remember Angela's final.
Yeah, I always wonder. I'm sorry, Jeff, for the interruption. I always wondered, like, some of the kids sat behind the prosecution table. Some of the kids sat behind the defense table. It's like, I didn't want to read into that. I don't know if that means, that they were supporting their dad or they weren't. And how about, I don't know this at all, but, like, how about who's paying for all of this?
Yeah.
This is the third defense team. These weren't public defenders. I mean, so you went to court as parents every day, which I guess I would do if my son were accused of something. But at the same time, you kind of see in the tea leaves going, he's not ever getting out. And, I've also depleted my, retirement because these attorneys aren't free.
Yeah. It's
Angela's final words, guys, a reminder of this. Why do I hurt? We know. It's been proven.
She was so sick, guys. The three of us have talked many times. I mean, it's not lost on me about the children, and it's certainly not lost on me, and it shouldn't be lost on anybody listening, that she was basically dying for more than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And she kept over and over. And the preposterous, sickening portion of the defense that wanted to make this, kind of look or leave the doubt in the jurors' minds that this was some kind of assisted suicide. I mean, it's sickening.
Oh, yeah, that is sickening.
On that note, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and say hello to Blake, and tell Blake that there's a football game tonight. The Chargers and the Lions. Go Bolts!
Hey, well, hope your
Chargers, I love you guys.
Hey, I love you too. Hey, hope the Chargers do well. We know that we are cheering for your Chargers every week except for 2 throughout the season.
I get it. First of all, I don't believe that, but I understand what you're saying. I love you both. See you guys.
You're the best.
Thanks.
Take care.
Steffan Tubbs covering the case of Jim Craig from the very, very beginning. Honor to have him with us. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Wake up, Denver. There's no better place to start your morning than IHOP, where the pancakes are fluffy, the coffee is hot, and the smiles are endless. Wednesday, August 27th, join Jeff and Bill as they broadcast their show live from IHOP at 1595 South Colorado Boulevard in Denver. You're officially invited to be part of the excitement. Come grab your favorite breakfast and watch the Jeff and Bill Show in action from 6 to 10 a.m. Don't forget to try the special Jeff and Bill breakfast. Pancakes, any style eggs, and crispy bacon, all for just $7.10. It's a deal as good as their hot takes. All they need is you. Bring your appetite, bring your friends, and kick off your day with great food and great conversation. See you Wednesday, August 27th at IHOP.
Back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Tomorrow we're going to talk with Michael Braithwaite, journalist with the Denver Gazette, who was in the courtroom throughout the entirety of the trial, and he'll give us his final reflections on the conviction of Jim Craig and the sentencing to life plus 33 years for the other count. But now it's time for a little bit of levity with You Choose the News.
Yes, we're going to try to break the tension a little bit with America's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. You know how this works. Scouring interwebs for mere moments this morning to find really dumb stories about us humans. I give them even more ridiculous headlines so that we can play this fake radio news game show. Yeah, why would we waste time doing this at 6:51 in the morning? Because those in charge do not arise until 7. Once Jeff and I found out that we are completely and totally unsupervised at this hour, oh, you better believe we're taking advantage of it. The only thing is we can't drink alcohol this early in the morning. We don't do that, and it's against FCC rules. So this is the next best thing. Alrighty, because drunk Jeff and Bill are fun. Okay, now, here we go. We always bring in Blake Olson from the news department. Blake doesn't get the alcohol because he's an angry drunk. At least that's what I've heard from stories back in training camps. I'm teasing you, Blake. I have no idea.
You didn't hurt my feelings.
Okay, here we go. Gentlemen, one time, okay, at some point or another, we're all going to have that thing that, what's the one drink in your younger years that you had that you can't touch anymore? Because we all have that one alcohol, but that's not for today, gentlemen. We'll talk about that another day. All right. Here we go. Because each one of those things comes with a story, and I'm not sure parents want to hear it. Okay. All righty. Here are our headline choices this morning. Headline number 1, going international. Headline number 2, Arrested Development. Headline number 3, hey, this is kind of a theme thing, free alcohol. And headline number 4, setting expectations. Mr. Hunt, your choice.
We're going to free alcohol, sir.
Yeah, free alcohol. It's the best kind. Now, beverage brand High Noon is going to have to recall some of their vodka seltzer packs because you could be picking them up nearly for free. They put them in the wrong cans. They are mislabeled as non-alcohol energy drinks, creating a potential problem for some kids and other people that may not know what they're getting. In an announcement that was posted this week, U.S. Food Drug Administration said 2 lots of High Noon Beverages Variety 12 packs are mislabeled as Celsius Astro Vibe energy drink instead of the harder stuff. They accidentally miscanned them. You can tell you got the wrong cans because Celsius normally has a black lid. If you find them and they have the silver lid, yeah, you win. You get the free alcohol. However, you would have to leave the state of Colorado in order to find them. The recalled packs were shipped for distribution in Florida, Michigan, New York, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Virginia, and Wisconsin. Oklahoma's not that far away. I'm still saying we do have the codes. You can find the boxes if you find them. They say you should return them to High Noon to get your money back. And why would you do that? You're paying for Celsius and you're getting the alcohol. Don't do that. That'd be stupid. But again, if you find the ones that don't have the black lids and they have the silver silver lids. Hey, you're a winner. All right. Now, Blake, your choice, sir. Going international, Arrested Development, or setting expectations?
Let's go international.
Yeah, let's go international. In fact, we are talking about a sponsor of the Jeff and Bill Show, the International House of Pancakes. IHOP is leaning into the first world vibe of their name, and they're jumping on this global trend of lavish food. Yes, IHOP is capitalizing on the Dubai chocolate trend. It's tantalized TikTok users over the past year. It's gone wild on social media. This decadent flavor profile is now coming to IHOP. They are debuting some luxurious pancakes. Okay? Now, here's the deal. This, according to IHOP, is the Luxe Dubai chocolate. Now, it is the most expensive dish they have ever created. Buttermilk-flavored pancakes, but infused with Dubai chocolate flavors that include pistachio, hazelnut, shredded phyllo dough. The stack is then topped with some pricey perks, like a massive Dubai chocolate bar, Madagascar vanilla-infused whipped cream, and a shaving of edible 24-karat gold flakes. Yeah, wow. They're valued at roughly $3,000 an ounce, but they're only going to set you back $100 a stack at IHOP. Now, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to roll out anywhere just usual to grab these because they are so expensive and so exclusive. They are only going to be serving them Monday, August 4th, 12 noon local time in New York, L.A., and Austin. That's it. And they're only making a grand total of 25 stacks. After it runs out, though, IHOP will be selling 500 stacks of a pared-down version of their Dubai chocolate pancakes that'll sell for $13. But again, only at those locations.
Yes. That's awesome. That was Bobby's idea.
I know. I bet. I'm going to be pissed next time we see him. We're going to have to tell him, hey, what happened to our chocolate pancakes with the gold? You know?
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
That's cool.
All right. Final choice,
delicious.
Mr. Hunt. Arrested Development or setting expectations?
Setting expectations.
Yeah, setting expectations. One Tennessee school district will no longer accept doctor's notes as an excuse for absences. Why? The school says they are instituting the policy to teach students you got to go to work even when you're sick and hurt. Everybody does that as an adult. So this is intended to combat chronic absenteeism. But parents are like, what if my kid's sick with flu for like 2 weeks? They're going to be reported to truancy. Not my fault. No doctor's notes. But again, you all got that coworker that shows up sick. So get used to it, kids. There's no excuses in life. Alrighty, that's it. That's the end of You Choose the News. Back to you, sir.
We got Rose Puglisi coming up next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader. This is 710 KNUS.